Right here joining us right now is Tyson Chartier, the head coach for the New England Cartel. Also, may I remind you, a 2020 Coach of the Year for MMAJunkie.com. How you doing, Coach?
Doing good, guys. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. Hey, you wear that proudly. I noticed as I was researching what you've been up to. You stickied on your Instagram that acknowledgement. You and Eric Nicksick shared Coach of the Year a few years
Eric
ago.
gets a second belt. I need to act like I know him. I'm gonna put that up there. And be like, yeah, I know Eric.
No, that's awesome, and it was well deserved.
Thank you.
You have a great team. Not only a great team of fighters, they're good people.
Yeah, I think we do a pretty good job about vetting out people that wouldn't fit in and cultivating the right people that kind of fit into our attitude. You see the way our guys fight. It's like a blue collar approach. They're gritty. Mm-hmm. Even when we lose, we're in tough fights, and they're all good people. Like our families are all friends with each other and stuff. So it's a close knit family.
I was gonna say that you guys have like a family environment with your team.
Yeah, it's not an accident. We all love each other, and my kids call Rob and Calvin uncle. It's good. If you're gonna spend all that time with those guys every week and on these road trips and stuff like that, you might as well surround yourself with people that you would hang out with if you weren't at work.
I like that you guys travel together to fight, and even I've seen Calvin and Rob. They've cornered many of people. That's such a cool environment that you guys all have, and it seems like everybody's willing to help each other.
Yeah, I think it kind of happened on accident, whereas Calvin wasn't in the UFC yet, but he had just gotten to 16-2, and I said, listen, Rob's fighting in England, in like a month. I was like, you should get a ticket and come out with us. You can stay in the coach's room with us. I go, but you need to see how the UFC works. Mm-hmm. You could be a training partner with Rob that week, and just get to meet all the UFC staff. So that way, when you make your debut, which we think will happen soon, you won't be so kind of enamored by the bright lights and all the new people in the process. So you get to see it. And him and Rob just meshed so well that week that Rob didn't even end up fighting. Ian Entwistle, I think, had an issue cutting weight. So we didn't fight, but then Rob fought shortly after that. And he's like, I want Calvin with me on every fight week. And then fast forward another, I think it was another 6-8 months, Calvin made his debut, and he's like, I want Rob out in my fight week. So it's just been like that ever since.
Weren't they rivals at one point too on the regional scene?
They'll tell you when they get in here. They weren't rivals. They both were just gunning for that number one spot, and they weren't training together at the time. And I was still, working with Rob already, and I knew Calvin from the set of Here Comes the Boom, the movie. And I thought he was a great kid. And my issue at that time was that New England had all these stud fighters, but we were vastly underrepresented on the national stage. And my theory on it was that there was all these little gyms that had egos. They were like, oh, my best guy can beat your best guy. And it's like, cool, you might do that, but we should probably have them train together and get them both to the UFC, and they can win fights out there.
Right.
And so I kept him away from Calvin. They both would have fought each other, but I just didn't let it happen. And then eventually Calvin got back acting. He had a little bit of a layoff, and then came back and started training with us, and it worked out great because I don't know how it would have gone down if they fought each other, if they would have ever been friends after or not. Probably, but it's good that they avoided each other, and now they're like brothers.
Things have changed since then, though, right? I think I see a little bit more cross training from some of the gyms.
Yeah, no, I think New England opened up once we got some different guys in the UFC, and then once we left the gym we were formerly at and kind of went out on our own, we started bouncing around a little bit. And I think, and I'm not taking credit for it, but I think we were kind of like, well, we're going to go here, and then we brought some people with us, and then some other people that knew those people came in, and then, Lausanne became a hub for sparring every Saturday, and that was going on for a couple of years. Then COVID happened, and then now, Lausanne's still got a bunch of guys that go down there. He's a little further south from us. We do sparring on Saturdays a little further north, and we get a bunch of guys from, different states that come in, and now there's a lot less egos. I think everybody understands that, listen, this is the small pond. We don't bicker about what goes on here. The goal is to take, if you're a gym that has 15, 20 local fighters, and you've got that one prospect that okay, this guy could be good, you got to handle that guy differently. You got to get him out on the road, get him to spar with guys like Rob and Calvin or Joe Lausanne or whoever else, and get pushed like that. And I think you're finally starting to see a lot of those other gyms in New England kind of open up to that. And I think part of that too is I have the management company where I manage a lot of those prospects, so then that opens a lot of the doors for each other, for those guys that are under Top Game to train with each other. So there's been a lot of synergy in the last 10 years in New England, and I feel like we're finally getting to that point where we're, getting represented in the UFC and Bellator and all the bigger promotions. So I think we've come a long way, but I think we can go a lot further.
How has the culture changed a little bit with the UFC PI and Dana White's Contender Series? Because that kind of allows you to come out a couple times, right? You usually come out with a fighter, and I notice you don't come alone. And so being able to use the PI and all that, how has that changed coaching a little bit for you guys?
So it's good for cross training, and then you get guys like Nicksick who are like so welcoming. They're like, yeah, come into our gym, use it however you want. So it's been good because the gyms out here have flourished because of it. You know, you have a lot of guys that get to the UFC and then move out here to train at either like Syndicate or Extreme Couture. So it's good for the gyms out here, but then it's good for the people like us that come out and want to like train with the gyms out here. So we get the benefit of the PI, which, you know, you just basically pay for your plane ticket and get a hotel or an Airbnb. Then you get to train at the PI all week. You know, the fighters don't have to pay for that. They get free food, free supplements, free physical therapy, and you get to cross train with some of the best fighters in the world. You know, like we had a training session the other day. I think there was 18 kids on the mat, and, you know, world champions from different organizations, and all these guys are just like helping each other get better. So it's good for us to come out here, kind of test what we've been doing back home, and then learn some new things, then take those back home to the other guys. And it's good for these guys' confidence midway through camp to get out here and kind of feel where they're at, test themselves against some other people, see some things that aren't working, and then go back home with some things that are now gonna work. And from a coaching standpoint, it's like I learn a lot too, because I get to come out here and bump elbows with guys like Giffy and Eric, and, you know, even Henry St. Ledger. Patchy Mix's coach. I was talking to him today. We were learning some stuff from him on the ground, but you just get to see how other teams operate from like an operational standpoint, like how they set up their schedule, how they coach during practice, and then obviously then there's like the tactical part of it, like how do they, you know, different moves they're doing and stuff like that, and then just try to be a sponge and learn as much as you can to bring back to New England.
If they were to do a PI on the East Coast, what would be a good hub where you could hit, you know, multiple cities, different states?
Just do it right there in Lawrence, Mass, where we are.
How close is that to Boston?
It's like 30 minutes from Boston. You know,
About a drive to New York.
doing it in downtown Boston. Like, you guys think you have traffic here. You guys don't have traffic here. Like, you couldn't, if you did it in downtown.
We don't think we have.
He's starting
We don't
already
think
with
we have
this East
traffic
Coast,
here.
West
Well, you
Coast.
guys have it in California. You guys have.
Oh,
it.
well, that's a whole other animal. Yeah.
So, if you did it in downtown Boston, that would pose some challenges. It would be annoying to go in there like for the day and then come back. It's just dealing with
That
the rush
bad?
hour. It's just annoying, you know. Just going into the city, out of the city, parking. It'd probably be way better to get more land and stuff outside the city. Either probably north of the city, just that's where we are. But yeah, I mean, it'd be great if we had one on the East Coast that we could drive to. Even if it was like New Jersey or New York, we could drive 3 hours and like post up for 4 days, then drive home. You know, it is tough coming out to Vegas. You know, we're out here for 2 weeks. I got 3 little kids and, you know, a wife that's holding it down while I'm gone. It does get hard, but, you know, I think it's necessary at times that, you know, you got to do it. But if we did have this out there, it would be awesome. But also, I don't think it wouldn't be the same, because like you're not going to have all the gyms that you have out here, and then all the, you know, the fighters that you have out here, and then if you had one in New England and everybody's training there, then you're kind of cross training with all the guys your local fighters are going to fight against. And but I don't know, it would be awesome just for the food, the PT, all that stuff. I know that's one of the big things the guys love about coming out here is you get like free table work every day, and that keeps, you know, these guys going through camps. It's obviously it's a rigorous sport, so I know some like it more than others, but just being able to like get people like Heather Linden to fix you every day after hard sessions is like, you know, you can't pay enough money for that, and you get it for free.
Aren't you a little shocked about the traffic, considering like Red Sox games, probably like little by little they start leaving the stadium, right? Like staggered the traffic, no?
Yeah, man, we're not. I'm one of the few people from the East Coast that was like, in college, I'm like, if I could just see the Red Sox win one time, I'll stop caring. And I meant it. Like, they won, and I was like, all right, good.
That was it? That was a wrap?
No, then I like passively watched them after that. I was kind of like, all
Good
right.
thing you weren't in college in 1908 when they won their last one before they won it in 2004.
Yeah, we were definitely like.
Like 80-year run, man.
Yeah, it's like people want to hate.
Then
on
all of a
Boston
sudden,
sports
Annex
right now.
flex in. We're the city of champions. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Ugh.
I mean, I guess the Celtics did have an incredible
And
run.
the Patriots.
Yeah,
that's
and
where
then the
that's where they
Patriots.
stepped on everybody's neck.
Yeah, but
Yeah, we were so blessed for a long time. Like, you know, with the Patriots winning how they were, the Celtics won, the Bruins got some in there, the Red Sox got a few. It's like when we were little, no one was winning anything. After the Celtics had their little run in the 80s, it was like I remember watching the NFL with my dad, watching the Patriots every Sunday, but it was like the only games we cared about was when we played the Dolphins, wanted to beat Dan Marino. You weren't playing for the playoffs back then. You were trying to go like 2-14 and win 2 games against the Dolphins. And
That's cool. Yeah.
So people can call us fair weather fans, like, oh, you just must be nice to cheer for the hometown team. It's like, dude, I was cheering for them when they were like 2 wins a year. It's but right now it's not the best
Remember
time.
when the Bears smashed them like in '85
That
or
was
something?
86. The refrigerator.
86?
They had
that
their
was-
freaking refrigerator Perry
Yeah.
score on us.
They had some rough times,
Yeah.
man. So they deserve to flex.
Yeah.
Now that things are good. All right, a couple quick ones for you, just so that people know the history. At one time, Mark Delagrati's gym was kind of like the big one out there, right? Is his gym still around, and are you guys aligned in any way? Does that gym still exist, or?
Yeah, as far as I know, it still exists. They have some fighters like on the local scene that I still see at some shows.
Yeah.
We don't really cross paths with them
No,
anymore.
okay.
That's where we used to train. And then I think in 2017 we broke off,
Got
and
it.
then we're doing our own thing for a couple years. And then officially in 2019 we named it the New England Cartel. So we've been out of there since
Oh,
2017.
okay, so you were there for a while.
Yeah, so we
that's
were
the
there.
one where you have to duck under to
Yeah,
go in.
yeah.
and
It's that
all
old
that.
rustic. The basement is like.
Yeah.
No, we had some good times there. We learned a lot, and then some of the lessons that we learned there we carried into how to run this team, and it's
How far is Maine, where Tim Sylvia and Marcus Davis were from, and I don't know if they said
Yeah.
anything up there.
Yeah, no, Maine's big, so it's like we go to Portland, Maine sometimes for wrestling, and that's like an hour and a half drive for us.
Yeah.
But you can go like 4 hours past that and still be in Maine. It's pretty big. They were like, by the time they like really got in the UFC, they were already out.
Got it,
Like they
yeah.
weren't like they're New England guys. Like Mike Brown's a great guy from Maine. Tim,
Mhm.
champion. But it's like
So Boston is kind of like a hub,
Yeah.
and that's where these different teams you talked about. If you're gonna set up a East Coast PI, with there being, I guess, fighters in Jersey, New York, and Boston, it sounds like almost New York would be probably the most.
I think New York and New Jersey
logical.
would probably make the most sense because you get those guys coming up from Maryland and people from
Yeah.
Northeast coming down. So I think
That's what I was wondering, is how big Northeast is. I remember the CES show produced a lot of great fighters and those old school names that I brought up, but I just wasn't wondering if MMA just continues to kick off. Are there a lot of kids at schools that want to be fighters for the next generation?
Yeah, we're starting to see a lot of like younger fighters coming in. Like one of the kids that we brought out here with us, Mitch Raposo, he was on the Ultimate Fighter and the Contender Series. Like we started working with
He
us.
looks like a good fighter,
No,
man.
he's phenomenal. Like
Tough fighter. He just had a bad run, but
yeah, no, he lost at 35 in the Ultimate Fighter, and then he had a good round against Hadley and just got caught in the second. But there's no shame in that. He's a good fighter. But he's ripped off 3 finishes since then. Like, so we brought him out here with us this week. Like, he was one of those kids that's part of that new generation. He's 24 now, but when he was like 12, he started doing MMA, and then he wrestled in high school just because he wanted to be better at MMA. It wasn't like he wrestled because he liked wrestling. He wrestled because he wanted to be better at MMA. So you're starting to see those guys enter the gym, and those guys are just so around. It's like, well, what are you? And they're like, no, I'm an MMA fighter. Like, I'm not a wrestler. I'm not a boxer. I'm not this. I'm like, this is what I do. My sport is MMA. It's not jiu-jitsu. Now I'm going to fight. My sport is MMA.
you know who Deion Sanders is?
Yep.
So he's kind of like the big thing. He's taken a couple L's the last few weekends. What do you expect? He ran up against an LA team, right? But prior to that, I mean, really, like he was saying things. He said something important. He said, "Send me your kid, and I'll turn him from a boy into a man." What about you, Coach? How do you identify yourself and what your team, the cartel, can do for someone that wants to be a prize fighter, historical prize fighter, make a lot of money, or maybe just someone that needs to get off the streets and just become a better person or be more confident, stop getting bullying? Like, what's your, I guess, mentality or mantra as far as like what the cartel can do for someone?
I mean, I honestly don't think I put too much thought into like, I want to, bring in people and change their lives or anything like that. It's more of like, can I make you better at fighting and then navigate that journey along the way to make the best financial decisions or like the best decisions for your career? I think as a result of that, like taking that approach, we're ending up with some really good kids, like I've been with Rob since he was, like he was delivering pizzas in Florida and then came up and, now, they have a nice house, they have cars, they've just had a baby. And it's like, just navigating them through the whole career and being just a piece of that pie that changed them from like a person with a dream to now headlining UFC cards and having enough money to buy a nice place and have some money in the bank and stuff like that. It's like you feel proud of that. And then when you look at them and Rob's out here with his girl and their baby and like seeing them like become adults, because I'm like 8 years older than 7, 8 years older than those guys. So like seeing them like go through some of the stuff that I went through, like, you know, just first having a kid and, you know, buying your first house and, you know, having a reliable car for the first time, like you take that for granted. And, you know, once you have a nice car for a long time, but before that, it's like, oh man, I hope this one starts. And then, you know, just being like a functional member of society, like because of the all the moves that we've made together, it's like you're proud, you know. But I'm not gonna pretend that I had some like vision of like, oh, I'm gonna change these kids' lives or anything like that. It's more of like,
well, you kind of didn't answer my question though, because you did a lot for them. Not just you spoke about what you did for them outside or helped them accomplish it, because obviously they're the ones that went in there and did it. A car, a house, a career, you know. So that's pretty cool in itself, right there.
yeah, I mean,
know.
there's a lot of
It
people
may not
that-
have been the goal, but that's what came
Yeah.
out of it. I mean, those are some outstanding fellas over there in that next room.
And I think that's the thing I'm most proud of is like when I meet other coaches or people at different shows and they always speak, like they say that about our fighters.
Yeah.
That, like I'm more proud of that than the wins and the losses. Like saying like, you know, these guys are like good, upstanding people and they're good role models. Because there are like, you know, we all get a lot of messages from like, you know, either like a mom of a young kid who wants to be a fighter or like young fighters that are aspiring to like be big fighters. And you get those messages and like, I really look up to your team and what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Rob's my hero. Calvin's my hero. Like that stuff. Or like people saying like, I hope someday that I can train with you guys. And like hearing those things, that's like, it's rewarding because you know you're putting out like the right vibe and like people are seeing like what you're doing and they're believing in it. And you're putting out good people. You know, these guys, we're not getting in trouble. They're not getting in street fights or anything like that. And I feel like they're good role models. Like for my young kids, you know, I have 2 boys and a little girl. My boys, I want them to call Rob and Calvin uncle and some of these other guys on the team, like, because I want them to be good role models for them, and they are. So I am proud of that, though.
Would you allow them to be subs for title fights?
We've talked about this, and it would really just depend on the pay, you know? Like, you're not going to go, because think about that. If you're going to fight for a title, it's obviously an honor to fight for a title, so it's, like, hard to say no to that. But at the same time, like, if you're getting asked to be a sub to fight for a title, then you know you're probably close anyway, so maybe patience is a virtue or you get one more win or whatever. So it's like there's that gamble of, like, well, if I don't do this, I might not get it. But then there's the gamble of, like, how hard is it? Like, let's say you were the backup for the O'Malley and the Aljo fight.
Mm-hmm.
How do you prepare? You got to prepare for 2 guys now. So now you're preparing for like a 6-foot-tall striker and then also like an amazing grappler. So what do you bring in like Patchy Mix and then someone else? Like, what do you know? How do you get ready for 2 guys? So you're basically doing kind of like 2 camps. You're preparing for both what if scenarios, and obviously the stress of being the backup and having to cut weight and do all that. And I hear what I think it would just depend on what you're getting paid, because I think I've heard some people that have gone and been backups and they get like basically like not much, and then other people that get their full show or something like that. So I think it would just depend on the situation.
What do you think's fair?
I think if you're going to go through a whole camp and you're going to, because obviously your show and win for a non-title fight is different than your contracted show for a title fight. So I think if you go through a whole camp to fight 2 different guys, and it makes sense, right? And you're going to go do it, I think you should at least just get your contracted show. Mm-hmm. And then if you fight, then you get your championship show. But if you're going to weigh in as the backup and you make weight, you put together the resources of a whole camp. I mean, just like...
I think you should get your show times too. Which is basically your show and win, because usually everyone's 50-50 on those.
Yeah, I mean, I think it had... Yeah.
Because you're right. You prepared for 2 guys. That's a wear and tear of a camp on your body. You know what I mean? Unless there's some sort of a solid... promise, I guess, that you're next. Like with what they did to Colby. Dana keeps saying, why is it Covington versus Edwards? And he goes, because Colby Covington was the sub in London, so he's next.
Yeah.
Now, Pavlovich was the sub for Gane versus Jones. He's not next. So it doesn't always guarantee it. So I think you just got to get it, I guess, I don't know, in writing or some sort of assurances. But I just hope that it's worth these fighters' times, and I'm wondering where most coaches feel about this.
It's tough because you're balancing, like, the whole reason you do this with certain guys, like with Rob and Calvin, the whole goal is to win a title. That's when we first set off. We broke off in 2017. We were like, all right, we're going to chase two belts. That was the whole like mission statement. And if you get that call, it's hard to say no, but also you want to make sure that it makes sense, and you're considering the pros and cons of every opportunity, and you got to kind of go with your gut on some of those things. So, I guess we'd have to see how that works. Because there have been times where we're like, hey, are we the backup for this? And it was like, no, we're not going to use a backup because there's other title fights. So, like, it's definitely something we're interested in doing.
Mm-hmm.
It would just have to make sense, and it's like...
Are you in the doghouse if we decline that? to be the backup?
I don't think so. I don't think so because I think there's 3 other guys sitting right behind you that would gladly do it and leapfrog you. So I don't think you're like posing them.
It worked for Royval. Now that I think about it, I think he was a backup over the summer. So
Yeah. So I think it just depends.
Okay, last one from me. All of our in studios, we ask them if they can share a good street fight story.
Dude, I've never been in a street fight.
You look like you could have collected for Whitey Bulger. Look how big you are. You're gonna tell me you had no fights?
No. So my brother was gonna get in a fight. So we went to some park, which coincidentally ended up being like right by my wife's house that she grew up in.
Okay.
So we go to some park after wrestling practice. He gets in a fight with some kid.
Oh, this was planned. We'll
Yeah, they were like, we're gonna fight at the park. Like,
Gotcha.
And we fought. Like, I don't know. They met like 9:30.
So it was you and your
dark.
brother, and then how many were on the other side?
No, it was like me and the other 3 wrestling captains. I was the senior. I was the captain, and the other 3 wrestling captains, and like a JV kid in our car. And we drove in a van. And then my brother went with this kid Tony. They got out of their car, so we walked up, and the other 3 captains wouldn't even get out of the car. They were like, "I'm not being part of this." So I was like, "Well, this is my little brother. I gotta go protect him."
But your numbers were about 6 or 7 altogether, right?
No, there was 3 of us.
3.
And then so they had like probably 4 or 5 guys there, and then they started fighting. It was a fair fight. And then my brother took him down, started beat him up. And then next thing you know, these people just that happened to be there partying came out of the woods and they started throwing like beer cans at my brother. So I pulled my brother off, and then they started coming at us. So we like ran down the road. And
How many of them were there?
I would say maybe like 10.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. They were just coming out of the woods, so I don't know how many people were in the woods. So we start running down the road, and my brother, I've never seen anybody jump over a car and get in a car and drive off faster. Because those 2 kids, I was like making sure they got it, and I looked back to see
Like
where
the Duke brothers in
it was
Hazard?
It was like a
Dukes of Hazzard?
stunt man. I look back, and I see these guys coming. I look back, and the car's gone. I'm like, oh, no. So I was like, what do I do? So I tried to run between 2 houses, and there was a fence.
Your brother left you?
He didn't know I was getting in his car because I didn't go there with him. He thought I was going to get in the other car.
Yeah.
So I run between the fence, like, oh no. So then I had to like run back, and I see like 3 guys coming. I just see a fist. I went like this. And then next thing I got pushed from behind. I'm on the ground. I see boots coming. So I covered up. And then at that time, the van was kind of parked by where I was the one I came in. So they have the other 3 wrestling captains, which were like the 171, the 189, and the 215. I was the 145. So I'm the little guy. And then my backup, this kid, we called him Pip because he got pinned by a girl, so pinned instantly by, you know. So, but they're like, oh, Tyson's getting his ass beat. And so they're like, well, I'm not doing anything. So my backup, this kid, Dave Provencio, I'll never forget, he gets out of the car, runs down, and is like, what are you guys doing? And then I remember I looked at it like corner of my eye. They knock him out with 1 punch. He falls down.
They knocked out Dave?
They knocked out Dave, 1 punch, and he's stretched out just like a bad knockout in MMA. And so all of a sudden I see him start to kick him. So I roll over, I crawl over to him, and I covered him up, grabbed his head, and I'm just like bracing because they're out just kicking us all now. And next thing you know, I see a tire right here. And this car pulled up onto the lawn. It was the girlfriends of the guys that were beating us up. And they got out there, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then we got into their car of the girlfriends of the guys that were beating us up, and then they drove us home. And then that was it. And then the next Monday at school, it was like everybody's talking about it. And the kid comes up to me, gets in my face. This is a week before wrestling states. So if you get in a fight in our school, it was like a 0 tolerance policy. Even if someone hits you, you're suspended. You know, so and if you get suspended, you don't do the next sporting event. So we have states coming up, and I'm like, well, I can't.
That's why those guys didn't want to get out of the car.
No, I think they want to get out of the car. I think they were just being pussies. Yeah, like needless to say, those guys are not my friends anymore. And so the kid comes up to me Monday at school, and he's like, yo, what's this you're telling people I hit you? I go, Mike, you know you hit me. And he's like, oh, and he got in my face. I was like, you know I can't fight. I was like, I'm about to get suspended. And he's like, whatever, man. And then like he walked away. And then everybody's like, oh, you bitched out. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Like I can't fight. I got to go to states. And so I was just overall it was a frustrating experience. But then it's funny because fast forward probably 5 years, I'm at Old Navy with my girlfriend at the time, and Mike's there with his girlfriend, and they were both in the dressing room. So me and him were both sitting there, and he just walked up and he's like, how you doing? Everything going good? And we kind of like shook hands. It was like almost that weird way of like him saying sorry, we're good, you know. And then our kids ended up going to the same daycare, and I used to see him all the time, and it was like funny. But yeah, that's my only street fight story.
No, that's cool. You know, everyone always feels like they have to present something where like they were the man and they knocked out 10 dudes, and sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. Phil Baroni once told us he got beat up by I think Michigan State cheerleaders, right? Yeah. Male cheerleaders.
They're pretty athletic.
Yeah. He goes, man, I thought I could take, and so he actually put himself out there, got waxed by some cheerleaders. They got the best of me.
I think most of the time there's fights, though, it's like alcohol's involved, and I've never had a sip of alcohol in my life. So I'm always the guy. I'm a designated driver, and I'm always the guy that like kind of sees it happening. You know, if you're sober at a party, and you see something brewing, you can kind of avoid it. So I've always been that guy. Just get my friends out of there. I was like, I guess let's stop, and then try to be the voice of reason. So
if Calvin and Rob were in that car and saw you getting kicked out, what would they have done?
I mean, I know they would have gotten out and they would have fought for me. But I want to say is like they would have let me get hit a couple times just to like mess with me and then say they saved me. But no, I don't think they'd hesitate. I think they would get right out.
Yeah, Coach, it's always great to catch up with you. Thanks for the
guys.
time, and we wish you and the team continued success in and out of the cage. There's a lot going on. You know, you got to manage. You manage the fighters. I know Calvin's got the other organization that he's the owner of as well.
Combat Zone.
Yeah, so you guys got a lot going on. We wish you the best everywhere.
Thanks, guys.
All right.